These orders are basically that we give you morality. We will tell you what is right or wrong. So where they're coming from is this. We live in the 21st century. The norms of today have changed. Things we look at differently. Norms of today are the following. Here's the criteria. And here's the yardstick that's going to change probably 100 years later. They suffer from their post-colonial masters' orders.
What am I doing? Hello everyone and welcome, this is the Apostate Prophet. I'm here with a rather unusual episode. Ali Dawah, a known Muslim YouTuber, has recently published a video in which he addresses former Muslims and makes very weird claims that I wouldn't even take seriously as you know me. But so many people asked me to talk about it, and I thought, why not? First of all, he would describe the cause of a reaction to his video as hitting a nerve. I'm sorry, if your arguments don't even qualify for being considered to hold any weight, you can't make such claims. Saying something like that only shows that you are afraid of the limits of your intellect, that you are well aware of. I usually don't like engaging in individual quarrels and targeting individuals beside the medical doctor, unless they come to me first. In Ali Dawah's case, I even sent him a message before, in which I asked him for a normal conversation between two individuals. Ali Dawah never responded, which I wouldn't hold against him, although he is someone who holds such things against others all the time. But in this case, Ali Dawah talks about ex-Muslims collectively and says that some of them are genuine and most of them are fake. I would really like to hear from Ali Dawah which ex-Muslims are genuine ex-Muslims. That would be something very nice coming from such a guy. He also shows us 5 ex-Muslims in his video: Imtiaz Shams, Abdullah Samir, Vidu, Mimzi and Sarah. And while talking about them, he explicitly says that some of them are fake and some of them left Islam for emotional reasons. Of course, no one left Islam for any valid reason ever. All former Muslims leave Islam at their own fault. That's not an unsurprising claim, because Ali Dawah is a fundamentalist Muslim who believes that Islam is perfect, Muhammad is perfect, and Allah is perfect. Therefore, everyone who left Islam left it only for personal reasons, for emotional reasons, or out of ignorance, as he points out in his video all the time. Everyone who joins Islam is of course not to blame for such things ever. But the main point of his video is to compare Muslims and new Muslims to ex-Muslims, and that's where it gets interesting. He says in way too many words that Muslims and new Muslims are those who hear the message of Islam and accept it as it is, while ex-Muslims are only indoctrinated by today's values that were brought to us by the West, or as Ali Dawah calls them, our post-colonial masters. He therefore makes an absurd and unintelligent insult to former Muslims and explains their apostasy with post-colonial masters' orders. According to him, the West is responsible for the rise of apostasy. The big evil of the West never gets old. In short, he says that some Muslims can't stick with their religion because they take their morals from the Western world and what is considered right or wrong today, and that's why they leave Islam. That's a very weird thing of Ali Dawah to say, because let's for a moment imagine a Persian individual in the 7th century. His beliefs, his worldview, his culture are so much different from what Muhammad preaches. But Persians, for example, converted to Islam slowly, then massively, after Islamic caliphates invaded Persia and made Islam the official religion of the land. What happened consequently is that a Persian person gave up the morals and ideas of his culture and adopted the morals and values of the Islamic culture. For example, Zoroastrian Persians used to believe that morals and good behavior are far more important than rituals and worship. But when Islam arrived with the sword, the whole worldview of Persians changed. They became entirely different people. That happened with North Africans, Persians, other Arabs, many Indians, Turks, Kurds, and so many other peoples. And mostly that happened due to military expansions of Islam. Does that mean now that nations that converted to Islam obeyed their Islamic imperial masters' orders? And therefore they started dressing, praying, naming, speaking, building, thinking, worshipping, and living like Arabs, or like Islam orders them to do? Doesn't that mean, by the same logic, Ali, that a convert to Islam in today's Britain ditches his own beautiful culture and his values and obeys the orders of Islam that is heavily occupied by Arab elements? What can we say about such converts? I would love Ali to give us a response to this. While Ali Dawah goes into this, he also doesn't miss the opportunity to point out that former Muslims adopt the morals of our time that will change in the future. That's quite impressive, Ali. Yes, our values are changing because humans are getting closer and closer, more and more peaceful, more and more caring about each other and our future. That's why we slowly get rid of things like cannibalism, mass rape, slavery, human sacrifice, concubines, absolute rule, torture, stone worship, and so on. In fact, Islam is the result of the same. Even according to current Jewish scholars, and even according to major historians, Jewish people before Judaism and other Semitic people were heavily involved in stone worship and worshipping trees and other things and multiple deities, and had no problems with human sacrifice, for example. Islam, however, was established in the 7th century. That's why normally Islam doesn't have those things. It had new values that it still preaches today, and when it introduced itself to different cultures, it told them not to do specific things, like being half naked in public, or having homosexual practices. Islam put them those goggles on, and made them think, oh, that looks bad, I shouldn't do that at all. Funnily, Ali Dawah uses this exact same logic to explain that former Muslims view specific things about Islam and Muhammad in a very bad way because they have their Western goggles. Now, would you look at Islam in the same light, Ali? Can you admit that Islam is only traditionalist today? It wasn't the result of traditionalism in its own time. It introduced so many completely new things to completely different cultures. And it banned so many things in those cultures. Like cultures that produced art suddenly abandoned such things. Wouldn't you say, Ali, that those people received their Islamic goggles, and the Islamic goggles told them exactly how to think, how to look at things? Thirdly, it is quite ironic that Ali Dawah talks about post-colonial masters' orders, because Islam expanded brutally like this. And this is the sole reason Ali Dawah calls himself Ali Dawah today, and not by his actual Turkish name. It's also the sole reason why he has a beard like this, uses Arab words, pronounces Islamic terms the Arab way, prays in Arabic, dresses in weird ways. Ali Dawah, who is a Turkish Kurdish person, does these Arab things because he is supposed to copy Muhammad, who was an Arab. Also, Ali, listen. You said in your video continuously that ex-Muslims obey their master's orders. Tell me, what exactly does the Quran say about hearing and obeying the message? Yeah, the Quran says explicitly, dozens of times, that the good ones hear the message and say we hear and we obey, without even questioning it. How do you think that looks from a non-Muslim perspective if you don't consider Muhammad a prophet from an almighty God? It's very ironic, to say the least, that you use the sheep analogy about ex-Muslims when the Quran says that about you. At one point, Ali Dawah equates criticizing Muhammad to criticizing parents. This is an extremely intellectually poor point that is very often brought up by online Muslim apologists. He equates that, and he even says that if he said some things about our parents, we would automatically get into the defense mode and defend our parents completely. Ali actually admits here that his defense or their defense of their prophet is irrational, right? If you know that your parents did some questionable things, but you still go on and defend them because they are your parents, that's irrational. That is nothing but emotional. If I point out that Muhammad was a warlord who massacred people, married a child, had a dozen wives, orders wife beating, and so on, and you defend him and equate that to your parents, Ali, then you are, I'm sorry, completely emotionally driven and highly irrational. I would also like to distance myself from his claims at this point. If my parents did absolutely worrying and wrong things, I wouldn't go on and defend them in public because they are my parents. I wouldn't go and be like, yeah, my father did grab some asses of women in the middle of London, but that's okay, there's nothing wrong about that. No, I wouldn't do that, Ali. I would tell him that he's wrong, and that it's disgusting, and I would stand my ground with that. And I would do the same if it was Muhammad, if it was my president, if it was my employer, whoever it is. That's the difference between us, Ali. The last point that I want to make is a challenge to Ali Dawah. In his video, he says that Muslims hear and admit everything about their religion when non-Muslims and ex-Muslims point out atrocities and illogical things about Islam. He also says that Muslims don't consider those things bad and that they don't have any problem with that because they obey Islam. Firstly, for many Muslims, we all know that that's absolutely not true. But let's accept that it's true in your case. Let's have a few talking points. Islam allows wife beating, Muhammad married a child, Muhammad had a dozen wives, the Quran forbids closely befriending Jews and Christians, Islam orders to install Islam and subjugate others, Islam preaches to be the only rightful religion and that others are bad and wrong. Ali Dawah evidently accepts all of these and he's proud of them. That's what he says. Ali, if you are so comfortable with these things, if you are so proud of that, why don't you go out and preach to non-Muslims and say all of these things up front? Why don't you go and say, hey, I'm inviting you to Islam, but I have to tell you that if you join Islam, you can't leave Islam. I'm sorry, that's just not possible. Our Prophet said, kill those who leave Islam. That's no problem, right? Also, by the way, you're a woman, I see. If you get married to a Muslim man, then please behave very, very well. Because if he fears your arrogance and he warns you 2 times and you don't correct yourself, then he might beat you. That's totally fine. It's all right. Allah allows that. It's fine. Just get used to that, okay? Oh, and by the way, he might also suddenly say talak, 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 and then you are suddenly divorced and you can't do anything about it. Crazy, right? Anyway, but that's also normal. I mean, he shouldn't do that, but if he does, Islam allows that. I'm sorry. Now, please join Islam. It's good for you. Why don't you go do that, Ali? If you are so proud of these things that people point out about your religion, why do you always bring up the Bible and deflect by different things when people ask you about wife beating? Why can't you just answer the question with yes when people ask you if wife beating exists in Islam or not? Why don't you in fact open a stand in the middle of the city and explain directly to people how your religion is incompatible with their values, but that it's also better than their values? You say that you are planning a show in which you want to respond to such points. Why don't you stand your ground and say this is what my religion says and I accept this as it is, no questions, instead of explaining to people by smoothing all these points so that the non-Muslims can be sympathetic toward your religion. If there is nothing wrong about these things in your religion, Ali, why don't you stand your ground like a proud man? You can't. If you are so proud, Ali, please do that.
If you have minimum 100,000 subscribers, we can talk. But for those who are using my name to climb up the ladder, first you need to get a ladder.
Ali Dawah will probably disregard this video because he has so many subscribers and I have only 45,000. In his video, he asks people not to bother him unless they have 100,000 subscribers because people are attention seekers. This is very weird coming from you, Ali, since you pick random ex-Muslims who have nowhere near 100,000 subscribers and make videos about them, attack them, or leave comments on their videos accusing them of being Islamophobic, emotional, and fake, even though they never talked about you. Dear Ali, please take off your Islamic goggles, and your clothes, and your beard, and your accent. Maybe that will help you be more consistent in your thinking. Thank you.